It's January 1920. The sheets beneath you aren't Egyptian cotton like your bed right now. They're rough, a bit scratchy, and the mattress has seen better days. Stuffed with horsehair that occasionally pokes through. Your boarding house room is small. Just enough space for a bed, a side table, and a hook for your few clothes. The radiator in the corner hisses and clanks, but barely warms the room. Outside your window, snow falls on a Chicago street. You can hear the elevated train rattling by, belching cold smoke that mixes with the frigid morning air. Car horns honk as Model Ts navigate slushy roads. A milk wagon still pulled by horses clatters by. This is a world between times, part modern, part Victorian, caught in a moment of radical transformation. You roll out of bed, your feet hitting the cold wooden floor. The boarding house offers no private bathroom. You'll share one down the hall with 5 other tenants. The newspapers on your nightstand carry troubling headlines. As of today, January 17th, 1920, Prohibition has officially begun. The 18th Amendment is now the law of the land. The manufacture, transport and sale of alcoholic beverages is illegal throughout the United States. You head downstairs for breakfast. The boarding house dining room buzzes with conversation about this new dry era. A factory worker jokes. "Well, I guess we're all going to be saints now." Everyone laughs. They all know better. "My cousin knows a guy," a young secretary whispers, leaning in. "Says he's opening a little place next week, password only." Within days, Prohibition would birth something entirely new in American life. The speakeasy. The term itself wasn't new. Since the 1880s, speakeasy had referred to illicit bars in areas with restricted alcohol sales. But now, these underground drinking establishments would transform from isolated oddities to the central feature of American nightlife. The speed with which they appeared was astonishing. When legal saloons closed their doors, speakeasies opened almost overnight, sometimes literally in the same locations, just with a new hidden entrance and a password system. You walk to work through neighbourhoods transforming before your eyes. That pharmacy on the corner. By next month, it'll have a secret back room where you can get something stronger than cough syrup. The basement entrance to that tailor shop. Soon, you'll need to whisper a password to get in. That nondescript door with no sign, it'll lead to a jazz club serving bootleg gin by Valentine's Day. Within just 5 years, New York City alone would have an estimated 30,000 speakeasies. Chicago, where you now live, would soon boast thousands of its own. Americans weren't about to let a little thing like federal law stop them from having a good time. By February, your boarding house friends have discovered 3 speakeasies within walking distance. One night after work, they invite you along. "Just tell them Joey sent you," your friend explains as you approach a nondescript door in an alley, "and whatever you do, don't look nervous. You knock 3 times. A small window slides open, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Joey sent me," you say, trying to sound casual. The door swings open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down to a basement. The sound of jazz drifts up along with cigarette smoke and laughter. At the bottom, you enter a room that looks nothing like the seedy hole in the wall you expected. The speakeasy is surprisingly elegant. Tables covered with white cloth surround a small dance floor. A 4-piece band plays jazz in the corner. Piano, drums, trumpet, and saxophone. Well-dressed men and women sip from teacups and coffee mugs, their contents definitely not tea or coffee. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and perfume. "First time?" asks the bartender as you approach. He's wearing a vest and bow tie, looking professional as he wipes a glass. You nod. Well, we got beer, we got whiskey, we got gin. What's your pleasure? This is your first taste of bootleg liquor, and the experience is interesting. The beer is watery and flat. The whiskey burns your throat more than it should. The gin, well, it's better not to think too hard about what's in the gin. Bathtub gin, your friend explains with a grin. Some guys literally mix it in their bathtubs. Grain alcohol, water and juniper berry juice if you're lucky. Sometimes they just add juniper oil to industrial alcohol. The quality of bootleg alcohol varied wildly in the early days of Prohibition. Some speakeasies managed to sell pre-Prohibition stock smuggled from Canada or Europe. But as that supply dwindled, most resorted to moonshine and bathtub concoctions. Some bootleggers even sold industrial alcohol, wood, alcohol, or other toxic substances that could cause blindness, paralysis, or death. Between 1920 and 1925, deaths from alcohol poisoning skyrocketed. It's January 1920. The sheets beneath you aren't Egyptian cotton like your bed right now. They're rough, a bit scratchy, and the mattress has seen better days. Stuffed with horsehair that occasionally pokes through. Your boarding house room is small, just enough space for a bed, a side table, and a hook for your few clothes. The radiator in the corner hisses and clanks, but barely warms the room. Outside your window, snow falls on a Chicago street. You can hear the elevated train rattling by, belching cold smoke that mixes with the frigid morning air. Car horns honk as Model Ts navigate slushy roads. A milk wagon, still pulled by horses, clatters by. This is a world between times, part modern, part Victorian, caught in a moment of radical transformation. You roll out of bed, your feet hitting the cold wooden floor. The boarding house offers no private bathroom. You'll share one down the hall with 5 other tenants. The newspapers on your nightstand carry troubling headlines. As of today, January 17th, 1920, Prohibition has officially begun. The 18th Amendment is now the law of the land. The manufacture, transport and sale of alcoholic beverages is illegal throughout the United States. You head downstairs for breakfast. The boarding house dining room buzzes with conversation about this new dry era. A factory worker jokes, "Well, I guess we're all gonna be saints now." Everyone laughs. They all know better. My cousin knows a guy. A young secretary whispers, leaning in. Says he's opening a little place next week. Password only. Within days, Prohibition would birth something entirely new in American life. The speak-easy. The term itself wasn't new. Since the 1880s, speak-easy had referred to illicit bars in areas with restricted alcohol sales. But now, these underground drinking establishments would transform from isolated oddities to the central feature of American nightlife. The speed with which they appeared was astonishing. When legal saloons closed their doors, speakeasies opened almost overnight. Sometimes literally in the same locations, just with a new hidden entrance and a password system. You walk to work through neighbourhoods transforming before your eyes. That pharmacy on the corner. By next month, it'll have a secret back room where you can get something stronger than cough syrup. The basement entrance to that tailor shop. Soon you'll need to whisper a password to get in. That nondescript door with no sign, it'll lead to a jazz club serving bootleg gin by Valentine's Day. Within just 5 years, New York City alone would have an estimated 30,000 speakeasies. Chicago, where you now live, would soon boast thousands of its own. Americans weren't about to let a little thing like federal law stop them from having a good time. By February, your boarding house friends have discovered 3 speakeasies within walking distance. One night after work, they invite you along. Just tell them Joey sent you, your friend explains as you approach a nondescript door in an alley, and whatever you do, don't look nervous. You knock 3 times. A small window slides open, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Joey sent me," you say, trying to sound casual. The door swings open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down to a basement. The sound of jazz drifts up, along with cigarette smoke and laughter. At the bottom, you enter a room that looks nothing like the seedy hole in the wall you expected. The speakeasy is surprisingly elegant. Tables covered with white cloth surround a small dance floor. A 4-piece band plays jazz in the corner, piano, drums, trumpet and saxophone. Well-dressed men and women sip from teacups and coffee mugs, their contents definitely not tea or coffee. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and perfume. "First time?" asks the bartender as you approach. He's wearing a vest and bow tie, looking professional as he wipes a glass. You nod. "Well, we got beer, we got whiskey, we got gin. What's your pleasure? This is your first taste of bootleg liquor and the experience is interesting. The beer is watery and flat. The whiskey burns your throat more than it should. The gin, well, it's better not to think too hard about what's in the gin. Bathtub gin," your friend explains with a grin. "Some guys literally mix it in their bathtubs. Grain alcohol water and juniper berry juice if you're lucky. Sometimes they just add juniper oil to industrial alcohol." The quality of bootleg alcohol varied wildly in the early days of Prohibition. Some speakeasies managed to sell pre-Prohibition stock smuggled from Canada or Europe. But as that supply dwindled, most resorted to moonshine and bathtub concoctions. Some bootleggers even sold industrial alcohol, wood, alcohol, or other toxic substances that could cause blindness, paralysis, or death. Between 1920 and 1925, deaths from alcohol poisoning skyrocketed. The very government that banned alcohol to protect Americans from its dangers had inadvertently created a far deadlier drinking culture. But people accepted the risk. The allure of the forbidden, the thrill of breaking the law, and the unique atmosphere of the speakeasy proved irresistible. For the first time in American history, men and women drank together in public. Before Prohibition, saloons had been almost exclusively male territories. Now, women not only entered these new drinking establishments, they became their most enthusiastic patrons. By spring, your weekly speakeasies visits have become a ritual. You've learned to recognize the signs of a police raid. A particular knock, a light flash twice in the window, a code word shouted across the room. When it happens, everyone moves with practice efficiency. Bottles disappear under tables or into hidden compartments. Drinking cups are quickly emptied into potted plants or down special drains. By the time police break through the door, everyone's sipping Coca-Cola and discussing the weather. Most raids were just for show anyway. Corruption became an integral part of Prohibition. Police officers, Prohibition agents, judges and politicians all had their hands out. Speakeasy owners factored regular payoffs into their business expenses. Those who didn't pay faced frequent raids and arrests. Those who did were largely left alone. One night in your now favourite speakeasy, a new band takes the stage. The trumpet player is extraordinary, his sound unlike anything you've heard before. The crowd falls silent as he plays, his cheeks puffed, his fingers dancing over the valves. This is the sound of something new being born. Jazz existed before Prohibition, of course, developing in New Orleans and spreading north with the Great Migration. but speakeasies became jazz's most important incubator. By 1925, Louise Armstrong would be revolutionizing the art form in Chicago. Duke Ellington would soon lead his orchestra at the Cotton Club in Harlem. Jelly Roll Morton, Bessie Smith, and countless others would find eager audiences in speakeasies across America. The marriage of jazz and illegal drinking created an entirely new American atmosphere, one of rebellion, spontaneity, and racial mixing that scandalized traditional society. White patrons flocked to black-owned clubs to hear black musicians. Wealthy socialites danced alongside working-class immigrants. College students mingled with gangsters. The social barriers that rigidly structured American life began to dissolve in these underground spaces. By summer, you've become a regular at 3 different speakeasies, each with its own character. One caters to the working class with cheap beer and basic surroundings. Another attracts a wealthier crowd with imported liquor and elegant furnishings. The third is known for its exceptional jazz and mixed-race clientele. But the relatively innocent early days of Prohibition were already giving way to something darker. As demand for illegal alcohol grew, organised crime moved in to control the supply. One night, the atmosphere in your favourite speakeasy changes. Men in expensive suits enter, looking around with calculating eyes. The owner greets them nervously, ushering them to the best table. The band plays on, but everyone seems tense. "Capone, guys," your friend whispers. Al Capone was just beginning his rise to power in Chicago, having moved from New York in 1920 at the invitation of Johnny Torrio. By 1925, he would control most of Chicago's bootlegging operations, along with gambling, prostitution, and other rackets. His annual income would reach $60 million, over $900 million in today's money. Capone wasn't alone. In New York, Minsky and Lucky Luciano built similarly vast criminal empires. In Detroit, the Purple Gang controlled bootlegging across the Canadian border. In cities large and small, gangsters exploited Prohibition to build criminal organizations of unprecedented size and power. Violence inevitably followed. Territorial disputes erupted into gun battles on city streets. Hijackings of liquor shipments became common. Rivals were eliminated in spectacular public assassinations. By the mid-1920s, Chicago averaged more than 500 gang murders per year. Many never solved, many more never even investigated. The ultimate expression of this violence would come in 1929 with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, when 7 men from Bugs Moran's gang were lined up against a garage wall and executed by Capone's men disguised as police officers. But that was still years away. For now, in 1920, you're just beginning to understand how Prohibition is transforming America. What began as a moral crusade backed by temperance groups, religious leaders, and progressive reformers has unleashed forces no one anticipated. Far from creating a more virtuous society, Prohibition has birthed a nationwide underground culture of law-breaking corruption and violence, along with unprecedented social freedom and artistic innovation. Fall arrives, and your speakeasy adventures continue. You've learned the lingo now. You don't ask for whiskey, you ask for tea. Beer is near beer. A flask is a striped kitty. Police are Johnny Law. One October evening, you're sipping a surprisingly good bourbon smuggled from Kentucky. The bartender assures you when a commotion erupts at the door. It's not the police this time. A group of society women in expensive coats and short dresses sweep in, already laughing and talking loudly. They order cocktails with confident familiarity, These are the first flappers you've seen up close. Their hair is bobbed short under stylish hats. Their dresses barely reach their knees. They wear makeup boldly, red lipstick and dark eyeshadow. They smoke cigarettes in long holders, gesturing dramatically as they talk. Everything about them defies traditional notions of feminine propriety. They were at a rally earlier, someone explains, for women's suffrage. But women already got the vote. You say confused. The 19th Amendment had been ratified in August, just a few months ago. State offices now, they want women in the state legislature. The arrival of these political flappers reminds you how many transformations are happening simultaneously in 1920. Prohibition is just one current in a river of change that includes women's rights, racial consciousness, technological advancement, and artistic innovation. As winter settles in, your speakeasy becomes something of a second home. The initial novelty is worn off, replaced by comfortable familiarity. You know the bartenders by name. You have favourite tables and preferred drinks. The original sense of danger has faded into routine, though the risk remains very real. On a snowy December night, you're there when something truly dangerous happens. Two men argue at the bar, their voices growing louder until one pulls a gun. Everyone freezes. The band stops playing in the sudden silence. You can hear the click as the man his revolver. The owner steps in, somehow calming the situation. The gun disappears. The man is escorted out. The band resumes playing, though the mood remains tense. This wasn't just speakeasy theatre. It was a glimpse of how quickly violence could erupt in this new environment, where the law and order existed only as concepts, not realities. As 1920 comes to a close, you reflect on how dramatically American social life has changed in just 1 year. Prohibition was supposed to end drinking. Instead, it transformed drinking into a national obsession, a form of rebellion and a new kind of social glue. Speakeasies have become America's most important social institutions. Places where rigid boundaries of gender, class, and sometimes even race dissolve in a haze of illegal alcohol and revolutionary music. You've witnessed the birth of modern American nightlife, and it's only just beginning. The next decade will see speakeasy culture expand and evolve, becoming ever more elaborate and influential. Cocktails will be invented to mask the taste of inferior liquor. Fashion will adapt to the new social environment. Music will continue to develop in response to this unique cultural moment. On New Year's Eve 1920, your speakeasy is packed beyond capacity. The air is thick with smoke. The band plays frantically as couples dance the new steps everyone's learning. Bootleg champagne flows freely, though it's hardly the quality you'd find in a legal establishment. At midnight, a cheer goes up. 1921 has arrived. Prohibition is still the law of the land, but no one seems to care. If anything, the illegal nature of this celebration makes it more exciting. There's a collective thrill in the shared defiance, a sense of being part of something subversive and new. You raise your glass, actually a coffee cup, in a toast with your friends. The jazz band launches into a wilder number. The dance floor becomes a frenzy of movement. A woman you've never met grabs your hand and pulls you into the dance. "Happy New Year, honey," she shouts over the music. "Here's to whatever happens next." What happens next, of course, is the rest of the Roaring Twenties with all its excesses, innovations, and contradictions. But that's just the beginning of how Americans really spent their free time in this transformative decade. The trumpet player hits a note so high and clear it seems to hang in the air above the crowd. The drummer picks up the pace. On the dance floor, a young woman demonstrates a new step, her feet moving faster than seems possible. Everyone watches, trying to learn. This is how culture spreads in 1920, person to person, night by night, in hidden rooms where the law can't reach. The policeman who regularly patrols this block walks past the door, deliberately looking the other way. He'll collect his payment tomorrow. Everyone knows the system. Everyone plays their part. Your friend leans in, shouting to be heard over the music. They're opening a new place next week. Supposedly they've got girls dancing the Charleston. She raises her eyebrows suggestively. Want to check it out? You've spent the whole morning wandering through the streets of Chicago. And now the mid-afternoon sun casts long shadows between the buildings. You pass a department store window and something catches your eye. A display of women's clothing unlike anything you've seen before. Short dresses with straight silhouettes decorated with beads and fringe. No corsets in sight. Mannequins with bobbed hair and long strands of pearls. This is the new look sweeping America in 1922, and it's causing quite a stir. An older woman stops beside you, clicking her tongue in disapproval. "Disgraceful," she mutters. "In my day, a lady wouldn't be caught dead showing her knees." You smile politely, but say nothing. Times are changing, and nowhere is this more obvious than in women's fashion. The transformation is so dramatic it's almost hard to believe. Just 10 years ago, women were still wearing ankle-length dresses, corsets that cinched their waist to painful extremes, and elaborate hairstyles that took hours to arrange. Now the most fashionable young women of 1922 look almost like different creatures entirely. Your curiosity piqued. You decide to step inside the department store. The women's department is buzzing with activity. Shopgirls demonstrate the latest styles to customers. A beauty counter offers cosmetics that would have been considered scandalous a decade earlier. Rouge, lipstick and eye makeup once associated only with actresses and prostitutes. "Can I help you?" asks a salesgirl with a fashionably bobbed haircut. Her dress is short enough to show her knees when she walks, and she moves with a freedom that would have been impossible in the constrictive clothing of the previous era. "Just looking, you say?" "Well, if you know any young ladies," she says with a wink, "tell them we just got in the latest flapper dresses from New York. They're going fast." The word flapper had been around since the 1910s, originally referring to awkward teenage girls. But by 1922 it had taken on an entirely new meaning. Flappers were young women who embraced a lifestyle that shocked traditional sensibilities. They cut their hair short in bobs or shingles. They wore makeup boldly and publicly. They smoked cigarettes, drank illegal alcohol, and used slang that would make their mothers faint, and they danced. Oh, how they danced to the wild new rhythms of jazz. Outside the department store you pass a newsstand. The headlines discuss women's suffrage, not the National Amendment, which passed in 1920, but the ongoing struggle for women to actually use their new political power. Other stories cover Prohibition raids, baseball, Babe Ruth is having another spectacular season, and automobile sales reaching new heights. But it's the magazine covers that really catch your eye. They're filled with images of the modern woman, short-haired, short-skirted, and confident. These illustrations by artists like John Held Jr. and Russell Patterson have come to define the look of the era. They're everywhere on magazine covers, in advertisements, on sheet music. The flapper has become not just a reality, but a symbol, a visual shorthand for the modern age. You buy a copy of the Saturday Evening Post, tucking it under your arm as you continue your walk. The afternoon streets are filled with a mix of people, some embracing the new styles, others clinging to pre-war fashions. America in 1922 is caught between eras with multiple generations and value systems existing side by side, sometimes in conflict, sometimes in uneasy coexistence. As you turn a corner, you hear music drifting from an open doorway. A sign above reads, "Dance lessons, all the latest steps." Curiosity pulls you inside. The dance studio is a large room with wooden floors and mirrors along one wall. About a dozen young men and women are spread across the floor, watching intently as an instructor demonstrates a series of fast syncopated steps. "No, no, no," the instructor says, clapping his hands. "The Charleston is all in the knees and ankles. You've got to get that twist," he demonstrates again. His feet twisting inward and outward in a rapid rhythm, knees bouncing, arms swinging. This is the dance that's sweeping the nation in 1922. The Charleston, though it won't reach the peak of its popularity until 1923 when it features in the all-black Broadway show Running Wild, it's already making waves in dance halls across America. "Would you like to join?" asks a young woman near the door. "We've just started a new beginner's class." You hesitate, but curiosity wins out. Soon you're lined up with the other students, attempting to mimic the instructor's movements. It's harder than it looks. The Charleston requires a level of coordination and energy that's unlike any traditional dance. Your feet are supposed to twist inward at the ankle, then outward, while your knees knock together and apart. Meanwhile, your arms swing in the opposite direction of your legs. The young woman next to you, her name is Dorothy, seems to pick it up naturally. Her short dress allows for freedom of movement that would have been impossible in the fashions of a previous generation. This, you realise, is why women's fashion had to change. The new dances demanded it. "Where did this dance come from?" you asked Dorothy during a break, both of you breathing hard from the exertion. "Well," she says, lowering her voice a bit, "it started with black dancers in Harlem, but now everyone's doing it." She demonstrates a few steps, moving with confident precision. "My parents hate it. They say it's indecent." She laughs. "That's why I love it." The racial dynamics of dance in the 1920s were complex. White Americans were simultaneously fascinated by and anxious about black cultural forms. The Charleston, like jazz itself, originated in black communities. As it crossed over into mainstream white culture, it was often sanitized and commercialized, its origins obscured or denied. Yet its fundamental character, its energy, spontaneity and sensuality remained revolutionary. After the lesson, Dorothy invites you to join her at a dance hall that evening. They've got a hot jazz band, she says, and they don't water down their drinks too much, if you know what I mean. Hours later, you find yourself in a large, crowded dance hall. It's not a speakeasy. Alcohol is served discreetly, but dancing is the main attraction. A jazz band plays on a raised stage at one end of the room. The dance floor is packed with couples doing the foxtrot, the shimmy, and yes, the Charleston. Dorothy introduces you to her friends, a lively group of young men and women in their early 20s. The women all sport bobbed hair and knee-length dresses. They smoke cigarettes and use slang. You're still learning. "That's the cat's meow," one says about the band. "Absolutely, Jake," agrees another. "Don't be a flat tire," Dorothy tells you, pulling you onto the dance floor. "Let's show them what we learned today." The Charleston was just one of many dances that defined the era. The black bottom, even more scandalous with its hip movements and shuffling steps, was gaining popularity. The shimmy, which involved holding the body still while shaking the shoulders back and forth, had been shocking audiences since the late 1910s. The bunny hug, the turkey trot, the grizzly bear all featured animal-like movements that would have been unthinkable in the formal ballrooms of the previous century. These dances weren't just entertainment, they were expressions of a new physical freedom, especially for women in the Victorian era. Respectable women were expected to be physically restrained, their bodies confined by both clothing and social convention. The new dancers of the 1920s celebrated the body in motion, energetic, expressive, and uninhibited. As the evening progresses, you notice something else about this dance hall. While most of the patrons are white, there's a small group of black couples dancing near one side of the room. They're not fully integrated with the white dancers, but their presence in the same space is still remarkable for 1922 America. The shared love of jazz and dancing is creating spaces where the rigid segregation of American life occasionally bends, if not breaks. During a break in the dancing, Dorothy introduces you to her friend Evelyn, who works as a secretary at an advertising firm. "Can you believe I make enough to have my own apartment?" Evelyn says proudly. "My mother keeps telling me I need to find a husband, but I tell her I'm having too much fun to settle down." This was another aspect of the flapper revolution: economic independence. After World War I, more women entered the workforce than ever before. New jobs in offices, department stores, and telephone exchanges offered alternatives to domestic service or factory work. While women were still paid less than men and often expected to leave work after marriage, a young single woman could earn enough to support herself, however modestly. This economic independence fueled social independence. A young woman with her own income could make her own choices about how to dress, where to go, and whom to associate with. The traditional patterns of courtship and marriage began to shift as women claimed more autonomy over their lives and bodies. "My grandmother couldn't even vote," Dorothy tells you, as you sit out a dance watching the crowd. "Now we can vote, earn our own money, and dance the Charleston Progress." She raises her drink in a mock toast, but not everyone saw these changes as progress. Newspapers and magazines were filled with dire warnings about the flapper menace and the moral decline of American youth. Religious leaders denounced the new dances as sinful. Schools banned short skirts and bobbed hair. Parents worried that their daughters were being corrupted by modern influences. One article in the Atlantic Monthly in 1920 had described flappers as women who trot like foxes, limp like lame ducks, one step like cripples, and all to the barbaric yawp of strange instruments which transformed the whole scene into a moving picture of a fancy ball in Bedlam. Such criticisms had little effect. If anything, they made flapper culture more appealing to young women eager to break with the constraints of the past. The more their elders disapproved, the more enthusiastically they embraced their new freedoms. As midnight approaches, the dance hall shows no signs of slowing down. If anything, the energy has increased. The band plays faster. The dancers move more frenetically. There's a sense of joyful rebellion in the air, a collective defiance of traditional restraints. A new song starts and Dorothy pulls you back onto the dance floor. "This one's my favourite," she shouts over the music. The Charleston reaches its frenzied peak. 100 pairs of feet moving in syncopated rhythm, kicking and twisting. The band's drummer drives the beat forward while the trumpet player stands for a solo that sends the crowd into a frenzy. In this moment, you understand why the older generation is so alarmed. This isn't just dancing, it's a cultural revolution happening on the dance floor. These young men and women are literally embodying a new world view, expressing through movement their rejection of Victorian restraint and their embrace of modern freedom. Their bodies move in ways that would have been unthinkable, even scandalous, just a decade earlier. By 1922, dance halls have become one of America's most important cultural institutions. They're where young people socialize, where new music is popularized, where fashion trends are displayed, and where generational values clash and transform. From small-town dance pavilions to urban ballrooms, these spaces define youth culture in the Roaring Twenties. The dance ends and everyone applauds. You're breathing hard, exhilarated and exhausted at the same time. Dorothy fans herself with her hand. "Isn't it the berries?" she says, grinning. "My mother would have a fit if she could see me now." For many young women, that was precisely the point. The flapper wasn't just a fashion statement. She was a declaration of independence from the restrictions of the previous generation. By cutting her hair, raising her hemlines, and dancing until dawn, she announced her intention to live life on her own terms. Of course, the reality was more complicated than the image. Most young women of the 1920s weren't full-fledged flappers. They might adopt elements of the style, a bobbed haircut here, a shorter skirt there, while still living largely conventional lives. They might work as shop girls or secretaries during the day, then dance the Charleston on Saturday nights before attending church with their parents on Sunday morning. American society in the 1920s wasn't so much revolutionized as it was fractured, with different generations and communities navigating the cross-currents of tradition and modernity. As the night continues, you observe the varied crowd in the dance hall. There are the true flappers like Dorothy and her friends embracing the new ethos wholeheartedly. There are young men in suits with slicked back hair, some from good families slumming for excitement, others working class guys saving up for a night out. There are older couples trying to keep up with the new dances and a few disapproving chaperones watching from the sidelines. "You should come to a house party next weekend," Dorothy tells you as you both take a break from dancing. "My friend Mabel's parents are out of town. She's got a Victrola and all the latest records." The home phonograph was another technology transforming American leisure time in the 1920s. Suddenly you didn't need to go out to a dance hall to hear the latest jazz. You could bring it into your living room, turning any gathering into a dance party. This privatization of entertainment would continue with radio, which was just beginning to enter American homes in 1922. "We're going to teach everyone the black bottom," Dorothy continues. "It's even wilder than the Charleston. You've got to shake everything," she demonstrates with a shimmy of her shoulders and hips that indeed looks quite scandalous. The black bottom would soon rival the Charleston in popularity. Originating among black dancers in the South, it featured slides, stomps and hip movements that made the Charleston look tame by comparison when it crossed over into mainstream white culture. It was often sanitized, but still retained enough of its provocative character to shock traditionalists. "My brother says dancing like this is going to be the downfall of civilization," Dorothy says with a laugh. "He's such a killjoy." "What does he think people should do instead?" you ask. "Oh, go to lectures or play chess or something boring like that," she says, rolling her eyes. "He doesn't understand that we just want to have fun. Our generation saw the war. Life's too short to be so serious all the time." This was a common sentiment among the youth of the 1920s. The shadow of World War I loomed large, even for those who hadn't served. The war had shattered illusions about the inevitability of progress and the wisdom of authority. Many young people responded with a determination to live in the moment, to seek pleasure and excitement rather than defer gratification for some uncertain future. the music changes to a slower tempo, and couples crowd the dance floor for a foxtrot. The foxtrot had emerged in the 1910s, but remained popular throughout the 1920s as a slightly more sedate alternative to the wilder jazz dances. Invented by vaudeville performer Harry Fox, it featured smooth, gliding steps that were elegant yet still modern. Dorothy is immediately asked to dance by a young man in a smart suit. She throws you a wink as she disappears into the crowd. Left alone, you watch the dancers and reflect on how radically American social life has transformed in such a short time. The dance hall itself is a new kind of space. Before the 1920s, respectable young women would never have gone out dancing without proper chaperones. Courtship happened in controlled environments. The family parlour, church socials, carefully supervised dances. Now, young women like Dorothy go out freely with friends, meet new people, and make their own decisions about whom to dance with or spend time with. Dating as a concept is still relatively new. The word only began to be used in its modern romantic sense around 1920. Before that, dating referred primarily to setting a date on a calendar. The modern practice where a man asks a woman out, picks her up, takes her somewhere, and pays for the evening was just beginning to replace more formal courtship rituals. The privacy of automobiles was changing courtship too. Parking, finding a secluded spot to neck or pet in a car, was becoming a common activity among young couples. This new privacy allowed for physical intimacy outside of marriage to a degree that would have been much more difficult in previous generations. Not that such intimacy was entirely new. Every generation finds ways to subvert social restrictions. But the scale and openness of the change in the 1920s was unprecedented. Books and articles openly discussed petting and necking. Advice columnists debated how far was too far. The term making out entered the lexicon. As midnight passes, the dance hall shows no signs of closing. If anything, the crowd has grown more animated. The band takes fewer breaks. The dancing becomes more abandoned. In 1922, urban nightlife is just hitting its stride, with many establishments staying open until dawn. Dorothy returns, flushed and happy from dancing. "Come on," she says, grabbing your hand. "They're playing a shimmy next, I'll show you how." The shimmy was perhaps the most controversial of the 1920s dances. Involved standing in place and shaking the shoulders rapidly back and forth, causing other parts of the body to shake as well. Performers like Gilda Gay had popularised it in vaudeville, and by 1922 it had made its way to dance halls across America despite being banned in many places. "It's easy," Dorothy says, demonstrating. "You just hold your body still and shake your shoulders like this." She demonstrates, her whole body vibrating with the movement, her string of pearls bouncing against her chest. You try to imitate her, feeling slightly ridiculous, but caught up in the infectious energy of the crowd. All around you, people are doing variations of the same movement, some more coordinated than others. The band plays faster, encouraging the frenzy. This is another aspect of 1920s dance culture, its participatory nature.